Ever scrolled through a website and been blown away by its seamless animations and sleek design? What if that website was your portfolio, leaving every visitor impressed and eager to see more of your work? Sounds cool, right? Welcome to a new video where you'll build and deploy a minimalistic yet modern developer portfolio with sleek animations using none other than Next.js. With a modern hero section with spotlights and text animations, latest Bento Grid design. Here, we went a step further and animated some parts into this grid. For example, this globe is a real 3D globe, which you can move around. Then, we have our text stack right here, some more information about yourself, even some code blocks, and then this nicely animated bottom part that allows your users to copy your email. Moving below, we have a small selection of recent projects. And what's cool about this, and the previous section as well, is that we're not only using Tailwind, we're also using Externity UI, which gives us a lot of these out-of-the-box framer motion animations. And that makes it look different from anything I've seen so far. Testimonials and companies you've worked with. Also, a section about your previous work experiences, about being a front-end engineering intern, mobile app dev, freelance project, and so much more. And don't forget, if you scroll up, you have this nice bar that pops up that allows you to scroll to different sections. Moving forward, we have My Approach, which tells employers how you work, starting from planning and strategy, to development and progress updates, to development and launch. So you're not just doing development, you're doing so much more than that. And a short but sweet footer section. And while you're building this portfolio, you'll learn Next.js with server and client-side rendering, routing and layouts for better performance and SEO. Tailwind CSS for a modern, completely mobile responsive UI, Externity UI for sick animations using framer motion, and Sentry, monitoring how many people have visited your portfolio. Now, with even better teaching methods, where you'll get a free open source code base you can look at if you get stuck, and a custom Figma design so you know exactly what you're building. Yep, that's it. Simple, yet stylish. So, are you ready to make this your new portfolio? Alongside this portfolio project, I've also prepared a comprehensive guide on making sure your portfolio has all the sections that it needs and that it stands out. And for the first time ever, there's now a dedicated Discord forum where you can get help if you get stuck building this portfolio. The links are in the description, and it's all completely free. Now, a developer portfolio is not like any other project. It is a career asset designed to showcase everything you're capable of, making you an attractive candidate for any job. And that's why I'll teach you how to go a step further. See, hosting your portfolio on a personalized domain makes you more professional, memorable, and improves your credibility and search engine visibility. So, before we dive into coding, let's get that domain name. I highly recommend Hostinger for hosting your modern portfolio. And right now, they're offering a great deal which you don't want to miss. When it comes to hosting this modern portfolio, I personally go for the premium plan. And here's why it's perfect for this and many other projects. You can host 100 websites with the same account. You get a free domain name, which gives you a professional touch. You get a free SSL for HTTPS security, which creates trust with anyone visiting your portfolio. This deal won't last forever, and because I've partnered with Hostinger, you get an even bigger discount. Once you click the link in the description, click Claim Deal, and Add to Cart. Here, we'll have to choose the period of our hosting. With the crazy discount going on right now, I'll definitely choose 48 months to save the most money. Down below, you can choose your payment method and enter your JavaScript Mastery coupon code, which will give you an even bigger discount on your hosting package. And once you buy it, we are ready to set everything up and get started with building out our portfolio. Let's start with Hostinger's guided setup. We are building a new website, so you can choose Create, and we're building a completely custom website, so we can choose Skip at the bottom. Next, we need to choose our domain. As you can see, I use Hostinger for my jsmastery.pro platform. So here you can type out your domain name. I would recommend something like your first name and last name.com. Something like johndoe.com. And if you purchase the hosting for more than 1 year, you'll get the domain completely for free. Choose it and click Next. The domain is registering. And while that is happening, I quickly want to point your attention to our improved Discord server. where now we have dedicated forums for each video. So if you're building this portfolio and you get stuck, you just go to the forum and ask a question. This is the best way to get help. Now already we are the next step where you can choose where your audience is located at, and you can see there's a lot of options. Click next and the setup will initialize. While that is happening, just another quick note, and that is that the full code base of the video you're about to build is live on GitHub. So you can check it out right here. And if you don't mind, give it a star. With that in mind, we are redirected to the dashboard of our hosting project. So finally, let's code it out and we'll deploy it at the end of the course. To get started building our minimal yet modern Next.js developer portfolio, we'll start as we always do from bare beginnings by opening up an empty Visual Studio Code window and creating a new folder on our desktop, and then simply drag and drop it into your Visual Studio Code. Once we're there, we can initialize our project. Now, before we begin, let me show you which software we'll use to develop it. Of course, we'll use React, the library for web and native user interfaces that allows us to use JSX syntax, which merges JavaScript with styles and HTML. Directly on top of React, we'll also use the official React framework for the web. Next.js, used by the world's largest companies, enables you to create high-quality web applications with the power of React components. So here, we'll get the speed and performance, while still writing very similar React.js code. To style our application, we'll use Tailwind CSS, a utility-first CSS framework packed with classes that will speed up our styling process. But then we'll power it up with Framer Motion, a production-ready animation library for React, which allows us to play with a lot of different animations. But we won't be using Framer Motion natively, creating all of these gestures, variants, and more on our own. We'll use Eternity UI to make our websites look 10 times more modern. They allow us to copy and paste the most trending components and use them directly in our websites without having to worry about styling and animations. It's completely free and open source, and in today's video, we'll be using many of their most popular components. Almost our entire website will be powered by Eternity components. Everything from scrolls to this globe you're seeing right here, animations, and so much more. After that, we'll have to monitor our application and check for breaks so we can fix them faster. We'll do that using Sentry. And finally, we'll use Hostinger to get our domain name and very fast servers so we can deploy our application and share it with everyone. With that in mind, let's initialize our project. To initialize it, we'll use Next.js's starter. So simply go to nextjs.org and copy the starting command. Back in our Visual Studio Code, paste it, and add / at the end, which will make sure to initialize it in the current repository we're in. Press enter, and we'll have to go through a couple of questions. We would like to use TypeScript in this case, and if you have never used it, no worries, I'm going to show you how it works. We will use ESLint to make sure our codebase is clean. Tailwind CSS, that's a big yes. No source directory, it's not needed. App router, yes. No need to customize things. And in a matter of seconds, our base file and folder structure will be set up. Let's run our application by running npm run dev. Hold Control or Command and press this localhost 3000 URL. It will open up this starting Next.js template. And I put it right here side by side with my code editor so we can see the changes that we make live. And also I will open up a new terminal, as that way we can easily install additional packages later on. For now, let's quickly explore the code base. We have the app folder, which is where we'll spend most of our time. Here we have our favicon, which we can delete as we'll add a new one later on. And we have our globals where we import some base components and utilities. We also have some predefined Next.js styles, which we can completely clear for the time being. After that, we can quickly check the layout. And the layout is responsible for our font. In this case, we'll be using Inter. And here we can add our title and description of the application. I'll say Adrian's portfolio. You can say, of course, your name, and I will say something like a modern and minimalist JS Mastery portfolio. Feel free to put whatever you want here. These changes should be visible in your browser's tab for this website. Immediately after, we can head to the page.tsx and delete everything within the return of this page. So let's scroll all the way down, and instead, let's return an HTML5 semantic main tag, which is similar to the div, give it a div within it, and for now say something like h1 that will say hello portfolio. If we save that, you should be able to see it on the screen. And let's also give it a couple of class names to check whether our Tailwind CSS is working. Let's give it a class name equal to relative. And by the way, as I'm typing, you'll be able to see which CSS properties are being applied given a specific Tailwind CSS class name. You can also get access to that by simply hovering over it. And this will only work if you install a Tailwind CSS IntelliSense extension. So simply search for it, install it, and it should work. It will also show you some things like classes, like if you do BG Black 100 or BG Black, it will show you the exact color you're using, as well as all of the CSS properties getting applied. Later on, we'll also use ES7 Plus React, Redux, React Native snippets. We'll use this to quickly spin up our components, so make sure to install it as well. Now, in this course, I'll also show you how we can customize our Tailwind CSS config. And we'll do that by referring to our complete Figma design at all times. From here, we'll be able to extract colors, fonts, paddings and spacing, and more. You can download this entire design for free. The link is in the description. With that said, let me show you how to add our first custom color. We can go to tailwind.config.ts and we'll want to extend our existing theme. We can remove this background image for now and we'll extend colors. Specifically, we'll extend the black color by modifying the default color like this to #000. So this is a complete black. And then we can add different variants of that black color, such as black 100, and we can make it #000319. This value, of course, we can extract from the Figma design. Now, what this allows us to do is go to page.tsx or any other page for that matter, and refer to BG Black 100, which will now give us that color. That way, we don't have to repeat 000319 every time and do that for all the other colors. We can just declare it once and then use it like this every other time. Let's also give it a flex, justify-center to center it horizontally, items-center to center it vertically. We'll switch the orientation by saying flex-call, as in column, and we'll make it overflow hidden, so we don't have those scroll bars. Margin X will be set to auto, so this will allow us to give some space to the middle part of the screen. And then we can also use Tailwind's built-in sizing functionalities for mobile responsiveness, such as SM, which stands for small, and give it a padding X of 10. So this will apply a padding left and right, meaning X because it's on the horizontal axis, only if the media min width is 640 pixels. So this means 640 and up. And we can also give it a padding X of 5 on all other screen sizes. Let's also style this div inside it by giving it a class name of max-w-7xl. This is for max width, and w-full. And within here, we can add our content. So what do you say that we start with our first section of the day? The hero section, with this top title, primary title, another subtitle, and a call to action button to show our work. We can start by creating a new folder in the root of our directory called components. And within components, we can create a new file called hero.tsx. Hero typically stands for the primary section that you see above the fold once you first visit the page. And here we can use that extension if you type REFCE, which will allow us to quickly create a React arrow function with an export. That's coming from that extension, ES7 plus React Redux snippets. If we do that, we can go back here and we can easily import it by saying hero coming from components hero. It auto imported it right here. So let's give this div a class name equal to padding bottom of 20 and padding top of 36. And let's create a div which will act as a wrapper for our first components coming from Eternity. If you take a look at our final design, maybe it's not so obvious on the mobile mode, but in our design, at the top, you should be able to see these spotlight effects, which are beams of light shining to the middle of the screen. It has a very nice visual effect. So let's figure out how to use it. You can navigate over to Eternity, and they have this pretty cool cert, which now you can find across many websites where if you press Command K, it will open up a search no matter where on the page you are. And this is a huge pro tip. As a matter of fact, this is so important that I will expand my screen and show to you how I use this feature on a day-to-day basis. Like in this case, I want to go here, search for Spotlight, press enter, and here I am. But it's not only for UI. Like if we go back to the official Next.js documentation, press Command or Control K and search for something like server actions. And immediately here you are. And then I would use Command F to find something on the screen, like use server. So this matters a lot. Using your keystroke like Control or Command F and Control or Command K to quickly traverse the docs and find exactly what you're looking for. So going back to Eternity, let's look into Spotlight. A spotlight effect with Tailwind CSS, good for drawing attention to a particular element on the page. Here we can see how it looks like, and right below we can see the installation. I believe most of these have already gotten installed when we installed Tailwind, but just to be safe, and because I know we have to install FramerMotion, let's copy it, go to our terminal, and paste npm install, FramerMotion, and all of these other packages. Then we need to add a util file, which I believe was already added for us by Tailwind CSS, but we can quickly check it out. It should be in utils cn.ts. So if we go here and search for utils, no, I cannot seem to find it. So let's create a new folder called lib, as in library, and within it, let's create a new utils.ts, inside of which we can paste what we just copied. This is just a helper function to make everything work together with Tailwind. After that, the next step is to copy the source code. They don't even need us to expand it. We can just simply press copy right here. And let's see where it needs to go. It's UI spotlight.tsx. So let's create a new folder within components called UI. And this is where all of our Eternity or ShadCN components would go. So simply create a new file called spotlight.tsx and paste what you just copied. You don't necessarily need to understand everything that's happening here, but if you need to change something, you can. We will actually modify a couple of these components later on. And immediately I can notice how it's trying to find utils cn, but I called it lib utils. So it might be better to follow along and do exactly what they say by creating a utils folder and then cn.ts inside of it. So let's do that. Instead of lib, I will call it utils. And then instead of utils.ts, I will call it cn.ts. That way, our spotlight will no longer complain. And now we can use it within the hero section. So let's use our first spotlight component by importing it from ./UI. And this is kind of the beauty of ShadCN and Eternity, and that is that you have full control over the components you use. Not like in Material UI or some other UI kits where you have to install the entire library. Here, you only import the code you actually want to use. And another benefit is that to all of the components from ShadCN or Eternity, you can pass native Tailwind CSS classes. So we can position it exactly how we want. Let's give it a class name of -top-40. minus left dash 10. And we can then also further position it on medium devices, minus left 32. On medium devices again, minus top dash 20. And then full height by saying h dash screen. We're just making sure it looks good on all different devices. And we can give it a fill equal to white. Now, it might be a bit hard to see it on mobile devices, but before we expand it, let's duplicate it 2 more times. And let's also change it up a bit so we have multiple spotlights. For the second one, we will say top dash 10, left dash full, and then we don't need any other medium properties. Rather, I'm going to give it h dash 80 VH, so this is 80% of the vertical height of the screen, and w dash 50 vertical width of the screen. And fill purple to have a bit of a different color. Finally, for the last one, I'm going to give it a top of 28, not minus top, and I will give it a left of 80 to just position all of them a bit differently. And I will also remove all of the previous styles and give it h-80 VH and w-50 vertical width and a fill of blue. That should give us enough variety. Now, even if we expand this, you won't be able to see anything right here. We can even try to maybe inspect elemented, but yeah, basically nothing is there. So why is that? Well, if we go back to a Sternity documentation and scroll down, you'll notice that we forgot to copy the highlighted spotlight animation into the tailwind.config.js file. So let's copy this entire config, go to our Tailwind config and paste it right here. Of course, this way we have lost our colors, but we'll bring it back later on. Don't worry about that. Also, if you press Command K and go to Add Utilities, you'll notice that we also need this Flatten Color Palette. We need to add that to the Tailwind config as well. And now we would have to copy this once again and then override our Tailwind config. And we would have to continue adding new stuff every time that we choose a new component. And for that reason, I've already prepared some code in this completely open source repo so we can get started more easily. So if you scroll down to the README section, you'll be able to go to Code to Copy. And here, you'll see that we have this tailwind.config.ts, which includes configurations for all Sternity components we'll use in the future, just so we don't have to copy and paste it every time. So copy it from here and paste it right here. All of this code is not something we write by hand, so don't worry about that. It is just the code coming from Sternity, and also it includes some more colors that I have extracted from the design. Other than that, we also have the globals.css, which will make our styling just a bit easier. So let's copy it and paste it to our globals.css within the app. And later on, we'll come back for the data as well as the assets we'll use throughout the project. Now, as soon as you have updated these files, you'll notice that we have to install some of these additional packages, such as mini svg data URI. So copy its name and run npm install mini svg data URI. We'll also need Tailwind CSS animate. So let's get that one as well. npm install Tailwind CSS animate. And just like that, we are back in action. And I'm not sure if you can see it on the screen, but I can see a light beam coming from top left, moving to bottom right. And on full screen, it's even more visible. It is subtle, but it is there. And it'll be much more visible once we expand our hero section to the full height of the screen. And right below the div containing these spotlights, we want to create another div. And that one will act as our UI grid. And for that one, we'll use a component called grid and dot backgrounds. In this case, we want to use this grid background. So let's switch over to code right here. And let's copy these two divs with a p tag in between. Let's properly open it up. And let's also indent it. If we save that, you should be able to see a grid appear right here. So let's quickly modify a couple of classes by making it h-screen, so it takes the full height of the screen, w-full, On dark, BG black 100. That is our specific variant of black. Typically BG white. On dark mode, we have this BG. Let's switch this over to 0.3. I found that to work better with our grid. And right here in this inner div, we can also change BG black to BG black 100. And then we don't need anything in it. We just want to use the background. So we can just make this self-closing. Now, obviously, this is not what we initially anticipated, right? We can see that it actually has a white background instead of a dark one. And that's because Eternity supports both white and dark mode, but our entire application will be dark. So let's use a theme provider to switch it to dark. To achieve that, we'll be using a package called Next.js. And if we scroll down, you can see that it has 500,000 weekly downloads. And I'll show you how to use it. First, let's install it by running npm i next themes. And then if you just Google next themes, you should be able to find a ShatCN dark mode. And you can see that that's exactly what they do right here. So we want to follow the setup. First thing we have to do after installation is create a theme provider. So let's copy this code, go to app and create a new provider.tsx file, and then simply paste it right here. After that, you want to wrap your root layout. So copy this theme provider layout, go to the layout file, and simply wrap your children with it. So we can do it right here within the body. We can, of course, indent it properly and import theme provider from /provider. Next, if you want to, you can add a toggle that will then allow you to switch between a dark and a light mode. But in this case, we can set the default theme to dark and save. Now, if we go back, you'll see that our grid turns dark. So now let's go back to the hero section, and below it, let's create a div that will wrap our heading. Make sure to do it below this div containing our grid. And let's give it a class name equal to flex justify-center. And before we continue adding some other classes to it, let's first add an inner div that will have a class name of max-w-89 VW. I found this value to work the best. And then right within it, we can render an H1 that will say something like dynamic web magic with Next.js. And let's make this H2 because this will be a subheading. So if we save this, you can see it right here at the bottom. So let's go ahead and make it a bit bigger by giving it a class name and say uppercase. Give it a tracking-widest. This will make it span out. Give it a text-XS, text-center, text-blue 100, and max-w of 80. Now, let's also style our first div that's wrapping all of this by giving it a relative, a margin y of 20, a z index of 10, and now we can style this inner div by giving it a medium device, max-w-2xl, on large devices, max-w of 60 VW, flex-call, items-center, and justify-center. There we go, here it is. Now, we want this text to appear over our grid, not below it, which means that we have to make our grid container a position of absolute. So right here at the end, we can say absolute, top-0, left-0, and we can remove the relative as we're making it absolute. Right off the bat, that will make it appear on top. And let's also make this white grid a bit less noticeable by giving it a 003 color. Of course, you can play with the values and find one that works best for you. Now, if we scroll down, we want to render our primary text to make it look exactly like it does in the design. And it's not just about adding the text, it's giving it its animation. So for that reason, we can go back to Eternity and we can search for text generate effect. And you can see how that will look like. So let's copy the source code and add it over to components, UI, text generate effect.tsx. Paste it here. And now we can use it right below the H2 by saying text generate effect. And to it, we need to pass two props. And you can even see the props we can pass here. The first one is the class name. And the second one is words. This is a pretty simple and straightforward way to say, hey, what you want to render here. So we can say something like transforming concepts into seamless experiences. And no, this was not written for me by ChatGPT. There we go. Let's also style it by giving it a class name of text-center. Text-40 pixels, that's for the size. On medium devices, text-5XL. And on large devices, even bigger, text of 6XL. And now if you reload, you can immediately notice how nicely it flows in. Right below this one, let's render a p tag that will have a class name equal to text-center. And here we can say something like, hi, I'm Adrian. And you can use your name here. Let's also use this apostrophe sign instead of just using apostrophe here. And we can say something like a Next.js developer based in Croatia. Let's also give it some styles, such as on medium devices, tracking -wider, margin bottom of 4 to divide it a bit, text-small, on medium devices, text-large, and on large devices, text-2XL. Now let's enter into the text generate effect, this code that we copied, and let me show you how we can modify it directly. Let's first scroll down, and here where you have a motion span, we can make this class name dynamic, just like so. And we can say if index is greater than 3, of course that has to be within a $sign and curly braces for it to be dynamic. So if that is the case, then we want to give it a text purple, and else we can give it the rest of the styles. Dark text white, and typically text black. So we can paste that right here. And in all cases, opacity 0. This will now turn the experiences into purple. Let's also scroll a bit down, and instead of margin top 4, let's give it a margin Y4, which will divide it from the bottom part 2. And let's remove the text 2XL from here. This will make it bigger. So now you know that you can make modifications even to the code that you copy. Finally, in our final application, we also have this phenomenal looking button with this nice effect. So let's implement it too. If you can guess, this will be yet another Aesternity component. So going to Aesternity, let's search for a button, go to Tailwind CSS buttons, and we can pick one that we like. This one has lit up borders, and this one has border magic. So let's just copy it and create a new component within UI called magic button.tsx, and here you can paste the code. Or rather, it will copy just the return value of this button. So we first have to copy it back and create a new React arrow function component. And now we can paste that button right within it and indent it properly. Now, if we go here, we can call that button right below our p tag by wrapping it in an anchor tag with an href pointing to /about, and we can render a magic button. Coming from /magic button, we can pass it a title equal to show my work. And if you do that, immediately you'll be able to see this border magic button. So let's go into it and let's make it a bit more dynamic. First, let's make it accept some props, such as a title, an icon, a position, a handle click, so what will happen once we click it, and some other classes which we might want to pass. And then since we're using TypeScript, we can now define all of those here. Title of a type string, icon of a type react.node or React node, I think it is. Position of a type string, handle click, which is going to be optional, and it will be of a type function that doesn't return anything, so void, and other classes, which will also be optional, and it will be of a type string if we do decide to pass it. So immediately we already are passing the title, so we can accept it right here. Show my work. Great. Let's also style it a bit better. We can give it a value of w-full for full width and change the roundness to rounded LG, which will make it a bit more rectangular. And then we can remove those focus rings. So going all the way here, after focus outline, we can remove those other focuses. I don't think we'll be needing them. We can style it a bit further though, by giving it a medium devices width of 60, on medium devices margin top of 10, and I think that'll do it for now. And we can also style this inner span right here by changing this to rounded LG instead of rounded full. Now it's rectangular. We can change the padding to something like 7 to give it a bit more padding. Padding Y I don't think we'll need in this case. And here we can render some of the other classes if we are passing them. But for that to work, we'll have to turn this into a dynamic template string. And then if we are passing any icons, we can render it either on the left side or on the right side. So if the position is triple equal to left, then we will render the icon right here. Else, if the position is triple equal to right, we will render it right here. Now we're not passing any, so we cannot see it, but this is it for our button. And now to this button, we can pass an icon by saying icon is equal to. And now you could use a regular PNG or SVG here, but I'll show you a better way. There is a great package called React Icons, which features icons from all of the different most popular packages. So you can simply install it by running npm install React Icons. And after that, you can use it by simply importing an icon. So let's import it. I'm going to use an FA location arrow, which is coming from FA6. And we can also declare its position. Let's do right in this case. So now we have this great looking icon, but we do need to provide a bit of spacing here. So let's go into this button and let's add a gap of 2 right here, which will create some spacing. This is looking great. And with that, our hero section is done. So check this out. It looks even better on desktop. I'll reload it and notice how the text slowly comes in, and we can also see some spotlights appear. Although I can mostly see just one, this blue one coming from top left. And if we compare it with the final version, you'll be able to see, well, first of all, that I forgot to add user experiences, which we can do right here, seamless user experiences. But besides that, you can see that here we also have this great looking navigation bar. I'm not even sure if we can call it a bar, as it hides when you don't want it to be there and it shows up when you want to scroll. So it's a pretty cool take on a regular navigation bar. Let's go ahead and implement it. Back in Asternity, we can search for floating navbar, and we can copy the code, add a new UI component, floating nav.tsx, and paste it right here. This one is a bit longer as it contains some navigation logic. So let's go back to page this time, and let's import it right here, floating nav. To it, we'll want to pass one prop though, and that is nav items. And you can see that clearly right here, the navigation items you want to render in the navbar. And this shows you how important it is to read the docs. And typically, all components you use have some kind of props you want to pass to them. Of course, we're using TypeScript here, so it's very useful to just get an alert that something's not right within your Visual Studio Code. And here you can also see the type. It will be an object with a name, link, and an icon. So let's try to pass one. Nav items is equal to an array of these different items. For now, let's simply say home with a link of / and a React node of something like FA home. If we save this, go back and reload, we cannot see anything yet. And I wouldn't worry too much about that for the time being, as we technically cannot even scroll anywhere. And the way that the floating nav works is that it only appears when you scroll down and then move up a bit, so it allows you to navigate faster to where you want to go. So we'll be coming back to styling this nav further and passing it the right nav items a bit later on, once we add one of the coolest sections of this course. So let's create a new component in the components folder called grid.tsx. And here you can run rafce, and we can import that grid right below the hero. Once it's there, we can navigate to it, and we can use another externity component. This one, it'll be a Bento Grid, a skewed grid layout with title description and header components. You can go to it by searching Command K and then searching for Bento Grid. On desktop devices, it has this very cool layout where elements in different rows can take different widths. So let's install it by copying the code and creating a new UI component called Bento Grid.tsx. And we can paste it right here. And this component actually exports two components, a Bento Grid and a Bento Grid item. So let's import them within our own grid component by turning this div into a section, giving it an ID of About section so we can easily scroll through it, and then immediately importing a Bento Grid component, inside of which we can render an array of objects with some kind of a title. Let's say title 1, and also a description, which can be description 1. And now we can map over that array where we get each individual item and also an index of that item. And for each one, we automatically return, by automatically, I mean within parentheses, not opening another function block here, a Bento Grid item. That is that second component which we have imported from externity. Now, this Bento Grid item does accept a couple of props to it, and we can see that to props, there we go, title, header, icon, and more. So let's give it first an ID, since we're mapping over it, of item.id. Let's give it a key equal to item.id as well, so we don't need an index at all in that case. We can also pass it a title equal to item.title, and we can pass it a description equal to item.description. And we also need to actually give it an ID right here. Let's do ID of 1. Now, we cannot seem to see what's happening now. There is nothing there. So let's get into this Bento Grid item and see if we can modify the code to make it work with our design. The only thing I want to do for now is give it a border of 2 and border of red 500. Oh, I think it already had a border applied, so we don't need this border of 2. And this red 500 will ensure that we can see it once it appears on the screen. But right now, there seems to be an issue with the ID. It says that we're not accepting it within a Bento Grid item, so let's accept it. We can say ID and define the type of that ID equal to number. So we know we'll pass a number, and we can also make it something to 1 right here. So now it's better. But that on its own will not make it work. So to fix it, let's modify its styles directly by changing the wrapper div class names. Instead of rounded XL, we can make it a bit more rounded, give it a position of relative, and immediately you should be able to see the card appear right here. And that's good right now because we know that at least we are rendering whatever is in here. But now, where are we actually going to keep this data? We won't really create different objects right here directly within this file. That wouldn't look good, would it? Something like this, where we would have multiple of these cards right here within our code with different titles, descriptions, and more. Especially considering that there's going to be a lot of text within each one of these cards. Some will even contain special elements within it. So for that reason, what I often like to do is create a separate folder within the root of our directory called data. Within that data, we can create a new index.ts, and then within it, we can declare those types of data arrays, such as this one. So let's declare it by saying export const grid items is equal to an array of these elements. So now we can go back here and just import grid items, save it, and immediately the same cards appear, but now our code is looking much cleaner while the data is extracted here, so even a non-technical person can come here and edit something if they really want to, without messing with your code, of course. Unless they do something like this, which means they're gonna break it anyway. But jokes aside, our project will contain a lot of data, like text elements for I'm very flexible with time zone communications, I prioritize client collaboration, and data for all of these project cards, testimonials, work experience, and more. So to save us some time, under the README of this project, code to copy, we'll have this data index.ts, which you can simply copy and paste right here. It will contain all of the data for this project, allowing you to very simply come here and modify something. Like if you have your project cards, these are right here. There we go. If you haven't built a 3D solar system, but rather something else, you can just change the title, description, image, and it will show up whenever we render it within the code. And within a lot of these, we'll also be using some kind of images. So to ensure that you have access to all of these images needed to build this project properly, the last final thing we'll get from this README are the assets. So you can click here and download it. Once you download it, unzip it, delete the existing public folder, and then simply drag and drop the new one to the root of our directory. And don't press add folder to workspace, rather just copy folder, which will bring it right here, and you'll have all the assets. With that said, we can close our index file, and back within our grid, you'll notice that now we have a series of different title elements, such as I prioritize client collaboration, my tech stack with I constantly try to improve, and other aspects. Now, to each one of these Bento Grid items, we can also pass some more stuff to customize it further and to get to that truly extraordinary Bento Grid that you saw in the design. This is the one I'm talking about. So here we'll have different technologies, we'll have a MacBook mockup, we'll have a button to copy your email address, and even some code blocks. So let's pass some additional props and then dive into the Bento Grid and customize it to our needs. Alongside the title and the description, I want to also pass a class name, which will come from item.className. So how this works is if you go to grid items, you'll notice that I created some of the additional class names that will apply to each one of these grid items. Primarily, it's giving them different columns and row spans, so they take different amounts of space. And you can see immediately this created a very nice bento-like grid. After that, we also want to give it an image in case there is one by saying item.image. And you can notice that we're repeating this item.something many times. So what we can do instead is destructure those values out of the grid items by using the destructuring syntax and then saying ID, title, description, class name, img. We'll also have image, class name, title, class name, and also spare image in case there is one. And all of this should be auto-corrected for you by TypeScript because it knows exactly which properties we have. And if we try to destructure something that we don't have, immediately it will say test does not exist on this grid item type. Great. So now instead of saying item.something every time, we can remove that item and just pass it this. Below image, we'll also pass the img class name equal to img class name. And we can also pass a title class name equal to title class name. And finally, we can pass the spare image equal to spare image or img. Now you'll notice that it's complaining about this image and some other properties which we're not accepting on the Bento Grid item. So let's go ahead and accept them nicely so we can put them to use. We'll need a class name, ID, title, description. We don't need this icon. We don't need the header. What we do need is the IMG class name, the title class name, and the spare IMG. And of course, we need to define the types of these properties. So we can basically copy them here. And now we can define the type for each one. Most, or basically all in this case, will simply be a string. And all of them will be optional because we don't necessarily need to have them on every one of these cards. And in TypeScript, you indicate that by adding a question mark at the end. And this is not a comma, it's a semicolon. Also, we can properly end this thing right here. We don't need a double close. There we go. So now we have those properties which we can use, and also we have some things to remove, like the header, icon, and so much more. So let's get started with properly styling our Bento Grid and modifying it to suit our needs. Right now, as you can see, it is broken. So first things first, let's remove this border red 500 that we added before. And let's also add an additional style property right here. This will be a dynamic style. You can also do this using the CN property. In this case, I'm just going to write it like this and give it a background of RGB 4729. I found this value to work the best here. And I also want to give it a background color, which will be a gradient. Now we need to get this gradient from somewhere. But before we go ahead and get it, let's simply remove this header and icon, as right now they're not really doing a lot. So we can just remove them. If we save that, we should be able to see some cards, but now let's give each one a gradient. For that, you can head over to cssgradient.io and you can generate any kind of gradient that you want. So you can go to something that matches our theme, something like this, and you can even change this blue one to something a bit darker. It's completely up to you. And then you'll get the background and the gradient, which you can then copy to clipboard and paste it right here as the styles. Of course, you'll have to turn these into strings and remove the semicolon and turn it into a comma instead. Also, it will be background and background color. If we do that, you should be able to see some kind of a background appear. And in my case, I'll use some of the values I created before that looked the best to me. I will also add this to the README down below so you can copy it and have the same gradient as I have. Immediately within this div right here, we want to create a new div. That will look something like this. Div that will have a class name, and here we want to make it a bit dynamic, saying that it's a template string where if the ID is equal to 6, then we will apply it a style of flex and justify center, so only for the 6th item, and typically it's going to have an h-full for all other items. So that will look like this, just a bit different for the last one. And we can also give it an inner div with a class name equal to w-full, h-full, and absolute. We want to put an image right here. So if an image exists, then we want to render an IMG tag that will have a source equal to IMG, an alt tag equal to IMG as well, and it will have a class name equal to CN IMG class name. So these are the class names we're passing from props, as well as some basic ones like object-cover and object-center. And we do get a warning that using the basic IMG tag could result in some slower speeds, but we need to do this to have a proper and easy deployment later on, and we'll still ensure the images are optimized. So if you do this, you'll notice that the card 1 and card 6 got this nice looking image. We can also go down below this div containing the image, just below the inner one, and create a new one for the secondary image. To this one, we can give a class name equal to, let's make it dynamic, and we're gonna make it absolute, right dash 0, minus bottom dash 5, and only if ID is 5, so only for the fifth one, we also want to give it a W dash full as well as opacity of 80. And now within here, if there is a spare or secondary image, only then do we want to render it by saying image, and it'll be basically the same as above. So let's copy the properties, but instead of source image, it will be spare image, alt will be spare image, and we don't need this CN right here. We're just gonna make it like this, object cover, object center, and to this one we'll also give W full and H dash full. And if we do this, you'll also notice that this image will appear right here, but right now you cannot see the beauty of it because these cards are not yet fully done, so they don't have the necessary dimensions to properly show it. But as we continue building it, it will make more sense. Finally, we can go below this div and create another div, but only if we're on the sixth item. So if ID is triple equal to 6, only then do we want to render. And of course, we'll use this animation from Externity UI. Only then do we want to render an animation. And of course, we'll use an animation from Externity UI. You can see this is the one we're going for, and we're going to use it right here in our sixth card. So let's copy the file. We don't have to copy the stuff in Tailwind config, we already have that, but we do need a source code for the background animation. So let's copy it. And back within our code, we can create a new UI component called gradient bg.tsx and simply paste it right here. And now we can use it within here. So let's call it background gradient animation. And within it, we can render a self-closing div with the following class names. Class name is equal to absolute z-50, so it appears on top, flex, items-center, justify-center, text-white, font-bold, and this should be enough for us to already see it. So if we go back, it looks like we'll have to properly import the libutils. So let me put this to the side and go to our background gradient animation and import CN from, I think it's coming from /utils and then /CN. There we go. That's the correct one. And now if we go back, you can see this gradient that we have right here. So let's continue with this div so we can make it look a bit better and more similar to what we want to achieve. And this should be justify center, spelled properly. And for now, we're going to leave it this big. We can definitely come later on to make it look like an actual card right here and not take full window. We'll do that later on, as we have to continue styling the other parts of this card. So let's scroll below this ID 6 and create a new div. This div will have a class name equal to CN, where we first render the title class name. So this will let us know that we're creating a title within it. And we can also give it some additional properties like group-hover. So when we hover over that card, /bento translate x2. So we want to move the text within it by 2 pixels. We want to give it some kind of a transition, as well as a duration of 200 for that transition. We'll make it a position of relative, and also on medium devices, we'll give it a full height, typically min age of 40, flex and flex call, so the elements appear one below another, padding x of 5, typically padding of 5, and on large devices, padding of 10. You can see that now the title will appear a bit differently. If we save that, not a lot happens, but now we can render another div within it, within which we'll render the description. So now we have the inside scoop, I constantly try to improve, and all of that other stuff as well. Let's style that description by giving it a class name equal to, and I actually think we're already using this title and description below, as you can see here. So we can essentially copy the class names for this description and then delete it from here. There we go. It should look something like this. Font sans. Instead of font normal, it's going to be extra light. Text dash, I found this color to work the best. C1, C2, D3. It's a gray color. Text SM instead of XS. We can remove this dark. On medium devices, text XS. On large devices, text dash base. And Z index of 10 so it appears on top. So now our description looks like this. Right below the description, we can render our title. So let's copy this div containing the title, and let's place it right here below the description. And if you're wondering what this group hover bento translate is, it was already coming from an externity component, so you don't have to worry about that. Great. So now we have this title as well. Let's style it a bit. Font sans, font bold. We'll also give it text-LG to make it larger. We don't need to provide it any kind of colors. I think that should be done by default. We can remove the margin bottom and margin top, and instead we can give it this. On large devices, text-3XL to make it very large. Max-W of 96 and Z of 10, so it appears on top of other elements. So you can see how this looks like right now. Looks great even on mobile, even though the Bento Grid is designed to be viewed on larger devices. Now, some of these cards have some images and gradients and some exciting stuff happening, but some don't have anything. And the goal is for all of them to have something unique. So for this one, for the second one, for example, we want to show this globe, okay? And for the third one, we want to show the tech stack. So now let's start by adding these special elements for each one of the cards, starting with the 3D globe, which you can actually move around, right? It doesn't just move on its own. You can actually hover over it, select it, and move it around. Believe it or not, this will be another Eternity UI component. So simply search for GitHub Globe. You can see it right here. And let's scroll down to the source code. This one, globe.tsx. Copy it and create a new UI component called grid globe.tsx, where you'll simply paste that data. You'll see there's some red stuff right here, and primarily it wants a couple of imports to 3globe, React 3 Fiber, 3JS, and even this globe JSON, okay? So for this globe, they actually provided a globe.json file, which you can simply click here, and then copy, which will provide some information about the data of this globe. After you do that, you'll have to add it to data folder. So if we go to data, you can create a new globe.json and then simply paste this data right here. Looks like it didn't copy the file for me, so let me do it one more time. Here, oh, this is display. I need to display the source blob. It took some time to load as it's a long one. And then we want to go to the raw file, and now we can copy it and paste it here. It has a lot of lines. This is just geometry and data to display the globe. So that is done, but now we need to install additional dependencies. As you can see, it's 3globe, React 3 Fiber, and more. So let's copy it, and let's simply install all of them here. And in a couple of seconds, our Visual Studio Code should stop complaining because it will get all of the necessary packages. There we go. It's looking good. And now we can simply use that globe right here. If we go below ID 6 and below the title and description, let's indent it properly. We can now create another dynamic part. If ID is 2, then we want to display a grid globe looking like this. And we'll have to import it properly to where we added it. Let's see, where did I put it? Grid globe components UI. Oh, here it is. Not sure why it didn't allow me to automatically import it. Let's see, export function globe. Okay. So if I say globe, will that find it? Yep, globe coming from grid globe. And you can automatically import it. It does say that it's missing some props, so let's go into it. And it wants a globe config in this case. So let's see if we have that globe config somewhere. Well, it seems like we only have the type for it, and we have to create it ourselves. Let's see if they provide information on how to do that. Globe config props. They do give us something, but they don't give us the entire globe config. Oh, but if we go to code right here in this globe demo, there is a globe config there. So let me see, maybe I copied the wrong one, or are they really different? Yeah, we copy this export function globe, which is coming from here. And this one doesn't have it, but this one on top, code, has it. So let's copy this one right here, and this is the usage of this grid globe we have created. So what might make more sense is to call this one just a globe. So this is the actual globe component, and now we want to create a new file called grid globe.tsx, which will be the representation of the globe component within the grid. And here we can paste what we just copied, which contains this grid config that they have, or globe config. And now we can import the globe coming from UI or coming from just ./globe. And now we should have everything. So going back to our Bento Grid, we want to import the grid globe. Looks like it doesn't want to auto import it, but we know that it should look something like this. Import grid globe coming from ./grid globe. Oh, and looks like it's a named export. So here, instead of saying grid globe like default, we have to put it in parentheses, and we have to be specific. It's called globe demo. So we can call globe demo and use it right here. Now, if we do that and go back, you should be able to see with Sell Soap, the globe is interactive. Okay, so this is coming from their example, but we want to go into the globe demo and remove some of the stuff that they have said here about soap. We don't really care about that. So in this outer div, let's clean it up a bit and say flex, items-center, justify-center, absolute, -left-5, top 36. This is just for positioning it. On medium devices, top 40, W-full, and H-full for full width and height. And immediately this looks a bit closer to what we want to achieve. From the second one, we can remove the H-full as well as medium H40. We don't need that. And then we can remove all of these text divs containing H2, P tags, and more. That's going to make it look like this. And here we want to remove this -bottom 20. Since we removed the height from this container, we have to add it, a bit of a different height, something like H-96, which is going to give it about 400 pixels of height. Going to make it look like this. And that gives us access to this full globe. And now that we can see it, we can go back to the Bento Grid, and we can fix the styles of our container to make it not jump out of the card, which matters a lot for this image at the top, for the gradient, but even for this globe right here, which right now is floating above the card, and we want it to be within. So let's go to our primary container div, and let's check the class names. Row span 1, that's good. Relative, we want to give it an overflow of hidden and save. And already this makes it look so much better. We can still move across it, but now it fits nicely within a card. Great. Now the next thing we want to focus on is the ID3, which will be the text stack list div. That will look something like this: React, Express, TypeScript, or you'll be able to type any of the technologies you are proficient in. So let's say if ID is == 3, then we want to render a div which will act as the container. So it will start with something like this, and it will have a class name equal to flex gap of 1. On large devices, a bit of a bigger gap of 5, W-fit absolute -right-3, and on large devices, -right-2. Within it, we can render the text stack list by creating a div with a class name equal to flex, flex dash call, as they will appear one below another, gap of 3, and on large devices, a gap of 8. Right within here, we want to render our left list first. So we can say left lists. And this left list is simply an array of technologies which you want to put on the left list. So you can do an array of something like React.js. We can also do something like Next.js and maybe something like TypeScript. And now we can map over those by saying .map, where we get each individual item, and we can simply return something like a span for each one of these, like this. So if you scroll down, you should be able to see React.js, and then the others are cut off, but they're here. We can also give this span a key equal to item, and we can give it a class name. That class name will have a padding y of 2, but on large devices, padding y of 4, and on large devices, padding x of 3. Typically, we also want to have a padding x of 3. We also are going to give it a text xs, like this. On large devices, text-base, opacity-50. On large devices, opacity-100, rounded-lg, text-center, and a BG of hash 10132E. So even if you go back to full screen right now, you can see that the first card looks quite good. The globe card looks great as well. But here, the technologies are still out of the picture. So I noticed that I accidentally closed this div too soon. This div right here is not just for the title. It's for the whole card. So let's copy this ending tag below the div title, and let's move it over all the way until the end. That way we're properly closing all the divs, and now our cards will appear properly and you'll be able to see the text on the left side. Great. With that said, we can go below this left side mapping, and we can create just a single self-closing span. This one will have a class name equal to. This one will have a padding y of 4 and padding x of 3, rounded-lg, text-center, and a BG of hash 10132E. If we save it, you should be able to see a new container appear. And now we're going to go below this div right here and essentially duplicate this entire div containing this list. So let's copy it and paste it below, but this time we can use different technologies. So let's say something like, this is going to depend on you, of course, but maybe we can do Vue.js if that's what you're into. We can also do something like AWS or maybe MongoDB. If we save it, you can see those appear right here. But it's not as close to what our final design looks like. You can see we have this empty span here, and on the right side, the empty span is on top to create this dynamic looking effect. So going back here, I'm going to take this span on the right side, which before was on the bottom, and I'm going to put it right here above the map. So now you can see how it moved it to the right side. Great. Now also, I noticed we can make some additional fixes to this primary class name, such as removing this P4. We don't need it here, as our cards already have enough padding. We can remove this dark BG black and dark borders and BG white. All of this is already accounted for by our theme. We also don't need the border transparent, and we can keep justify between, flex call, and space Y4. But we can add a tiny border by saying border and then border-white /0.1. So this will provide a very, very lightish border just so we can see it here. And now these cards look even more uniform. We have this great looking layout, and the first 3 cards are more or less done. This is looking great. Now let's continue working on the rest. If I scroll down to where we close this ID 3, we're going to keep creating some additional stuff for the one with an ID of 6. So if ID is 6, and this is the one with the gradient, if you remember correct, where we'll allow people to copy our email. So let me just show you how that looks like. Do you want to start a project together? Copy my email. Email is copied, and then even some confetti on desktop. So here we can create a div with a class name equal to margin top of 5 and relative. We want to create an additional div within it with a class name equal to, it will be dynamic, absolute, minus bottom dash 5, right dash 0. And let's fix this, bottom of 5. Right within it, we want to render a Lottie animation. And we can do that by installing a package called React-Lottie. Lottie provides a lot of React icons and animations we can use. And we also need its types. So we need to say npm install --save-dev add types /react-lottie. This will make it know exactly what we need to import. And now here we can render Lottie like this and give it options equal to an object of loop. Now it's gonna loop only when we copy it. So we need to have access to the state of copied. So why don't we create a state? Right here in the Bento Grid item, I will create a new use state snippet, call it copied and set copied, at the start set to false, and we of course need to import use state from React. Now let's also properly close it right here, just so it's not complaining. And we're gonna say loop only when we copy it. So when copied, then loop, autoplay when copied, once again, so autoplay, animation data will be equal to animation data. And this will be another JSON object which you can add to your data folder. So let's go to data and create a new confetti.json. And you can find this JSON file within the README of this project. Simply paste it here, and it's going to look something like this. It has all the confetti data. So now we can import it right at the top by saying import animation data coming from add /data /confetti.json. And we can now use this animation data right here at the bottom. Great. Finally, there's one property which we need to provide that's going to make it look better, and that is renderer settings, which is an object where we can add a special property of preserve aspect ratio. And we can say X mid, Y mid, and then slice. I found this to work the best for this sort of animation. We have to import Lottie from React Lottie, of course. And now if we go back, we'll also have to make this a use client component because we have used a use state. So here we can say use client, and this will make it work. Now we can scroll down, go below this div wrapping the animation, because how will we trigger animation if we don't have a button to trigger it? So let's render a magic button, which we have already created before. And to it, we can pass some props, such as a title, which if we have copied, it'll be something like email copied, else it's gonna say copy my email. Icon will be IO copy outline coming from React icons. Position will be set to left. And of course, this IO copy outline has to actually be a self-closing component. We can pass some other classes to make it look better, such as important BG. So we're overriding the BG right here, 161A31. And we can give it a handle click equal to handle copy. So this is a function which we can create to manage the copying of the email. So we can add it at the top by saying const handle copy is equal to, and here you can define your email by saying navigator.clipboard.write text. And here you can paste your email. contact@jsmastery.pro for me. For you, it might be something else. And then we want to set copied to true. There we go. So now if we scroll down, you can see this. Do you want to start a project together? Copy my email, but it's not doing anything at the moment. And also it's not appearing within a gradient, which is what we want. So let's go into the magic button and let's style it a bit further. Specifically, we're going to give it a handle click right here equal to handle click, which we're passing from props. Or rather, it's going to be an on click to this element. So now if we reload the page, you can see that if you click copy my email, you will get the confetti animation and it will say email copied. Now the last thing we have to figure out is how to put it within this gradient. So let's do that next. We can scroll up to where we specified a ID of 6 first and where we're using this background gradient animation. We can dive into it and then scroll down to this outside wrapper div, which is this one here. Instead of H screen, we're going to make it H full, and instead of W screen, we'll make it W full. And this will make it take the full width and height of the container instead of the screen. Also, instead of relative, we can make it absolute, which will actually show the elements within it. Now we can go back to the Bento Grid and we can check out if we're properly aligning it in the middle, because right now it seems to be aligned to the left side. So if we check this out, oh, looks like I have a mistake here. Justify center. This should be within this curly brace, like this. So that way we have the ID is 6 and flex and justify center. So we have to properly close it here and then typically H full. And this will center it in the middle. So now this is looking great and we can actually copy it. Let's reload and we do get the animation again. Great. So now if we expand this into full screen, we can see all of these sections in their full glory. We have I prioritize client collaboration, fostering open communication. And if you want to change any of these text elements, you can do so very easily. Just copy it, search it, remove an empty space at the end to find it properly, and you should be able to find it within the data object, where you can completely change any kind of text you want. Then I constantly try to improve my tech stack, very flexible, tech enthusiast with a passion for development, inside scoop, building an animation library, and then we have a copy email right here. This is looking amazing. So with that, we have our hero section, and we also have our Bento Grid telling people what we do. The next section on our list will be what our portfolio is all about, which is displaying the recent projects we worked on using this very engaging card that folds back and allows you to visit the live website that you're seeing on the screen here. I very much like this effect. So let's go ahead and implement it together. I'll collapse this right here, go back to the current version of the project, exit all of our currently open files. Oh, and I just noticed we don't need this div right here, which we were adding before, so you can simply comment it out within the background animation. Exit the files and just create a new section. The next section will be called the recent projects. So under components, create a new recent projects.tsx, run RAFCE, import it right here as recent projects, import it, and you should be able to see a text that says recent projects, which means that we are ready to start developing it. Great work so far. To get started with our recent projects, we can remove this text and give this a class name of padding y of 20 to divide it a bit from top and bottom. Immediately after, we can create our first H1 that will have a class name equal to heading, and right within it, we can say a small selection of, and then we can provide a space like this, and then create a span that will say recent projects. Now, if we save it, you can see it like this, but we can also give this span a class name equal to text-purple, just to provide some visual interest. Right below this H1, we can create a div inside of which will show our project cards. So let's give it a class name equal to flex-wrap, items-center, justify-center, padding of 4, gap of 16 between the cards, and margin top of 10 to divide it from the title. And right within here, we can map over our projects by saying projects, importing it from @/data.map, where we get each individual project, and we can automatically return something for each project, such as a div, within which we can return a project.title. Let's save it, and you can see the titles for 4 of my projects. Now let's dive into the projects by command clicking it to see what each project has. It's the ID, title, des for description, img, icons, and a link. And now I would invite you to go ahead and change titles, descriptions, and images for your own projects to truly make this your own portfolio, or we can keep building it out together and then you can modify it at the end. With that in mind, let's destructure all of these properties from the projects, such as the ID, title, description, image, icon lists, and link. We can copy that, and then we can automatically destructure them right here, so we don't have to say projects every time. I'm going to add commas at the end of each one of these, like this, and I will put them in the same line. So that will look something like this. We get the ID, title, des, image, icon lists, and a link. And we close it and then present a div with a key of ID for each one. And we no longer have to say project.title or project.id. Now it is just title. Great. So now let's give this div a card-like appearance by giving it a class name equal to, on large devices, min-h of 32.5 rem. I found this precise value to work the best. We can also give it a typical height of 25 rem, flex, items-center, so we center them, justify-center, so we center them horizontally. On small devices, W of 96, and typically W of 90 VW, so 90% of the screen. And now we have space for all of these projects. And right within here, we want to render another Eternity UI component. This time, it will be the 3D pin. Why a pin? Because it will pin on this card like this, and you'll be able to click it to go to the desired website. This card or this design is absolutely perfect for portfolio projects because it basically screams, okay, here I have some data and I can enter into that website to learn a bit more about it. Okay, it even points to the URL of where it will take you. A very engaging design. So let's copy the code by clicking here, and let's create a new pin container right here under UI, pin container.tsx, inside of which we can paste what we just copied. And it looks like it's using some kind of a pin container coming from UI 3D pin. So let's see what that is about. Oh, it says we need to copy this component, UI 3D pin. So let's do that by adding a new component to the UI section called 3d-pin.tsx, where we can paste this. And now if we go back, we can just import it from /3dpin. And if we go back into projects, we should be able to use it by simply wrapping everything in here. We can just say pin container coming from UI 3D pin, and we can wrap it like this. And in here, let's render the title for now. If I do that and scroll down, you'll be able to see that it kinda immediately works. But each one of these is in its own kind of space. We just want to have a simple card right here. So let's enter this pin container and let's scroll down a bit. Here we want to remove this BG black as we already have a background. We want to continue down, and under pin perspective, we want to change W96 to W full. And then I just noticed we don't even need this first pin container we have created, as this is just an example of how you can use it. So you kind of wrap it with something and then you put some stuff within it. So for now, I will delete this pin container and we'll use just the 3D pin. So now within this pin container, let's provide more content. Let's first give it a title, and this is where it will point to. So I think for now, let's make it a title of our project. And let's also give it an href. And this href will be where it will point to. So that will be the link of your project. Okay. Let's see if it accepts that. Title, href, title, href. It does seem like it accepts both. So why is it complaining? Oh, property children is missing, of course. So let's add the children. I'll create a div right within it. Within that div, we'll create another div, and that will be the wrapper for the image. So here we can render the image with a source /bg.png with an alt tag of bgimg. So if I save this, you cannot see anything yet, but let's also add another image right below this div. And this one will be the image of the project. So source, and it'll be equal to img with an alt tag of cover, or it can also be the alt tag, the actual title of the project, and a class name of z10, absolute, and bottom 0. Great. Let's save it. And even if we reload, there appears to be nothing there. Let's see why that is. If I go into pin container, it wants children right here. And where is it using that children? It seems like it's trying to render it here. So why is it not showing up where we need it? Let's look into that soon, just after we add the classes to this div within the pin container. We can give it a class name equal to relative, flex, items-center, justify-center, on small devices, W-96, typically W of 80 VW. Overflow-hidden, so there's no scroll. H of 20 VH for the height of the card. And there we go. So it was actually missing the height to be able to see the content inside of it. And now we have 4 of these great project images. Of course, you'll be able to use your own later on. We can also give it on large devices a bit more height, like H-30 VH, and margin bottom of 10. Now within this inner div, we can give it a class name equal to relative, W-full, H-full, overflow-hidden, and on large devices, rounded-3XL. And then we can give it a BG of #13162D. So now it's going to look like a card. It's hard to notice it now, but we'll be able to notice it later. Finally, let's add a title right below this div containing the images. It will be an H1 that will say title, as simple as that. Now let's style it as a title by giving it a class name equal to font-bold. On large devices, text-2XL. On medium devices, text-XL. Typically text-base and line clamp 1. So it means that it will not go into 2 lines, even if it needs to expand. Below that H1, we can render a P tag that will render a description. And we can give it a class name equal to, on large devices, text-XL. Let's fix this class name first. On large devices, font-normal, font-light, text-SM typically, and line clamp of 2. So you can extend to 2 lines. There we go. So this is now looking very nice and uniform. And finally, let's create the bottom part of this card, which should look something like this, where we have these technologies and also check the live side button. We can do that by creating a new div below this P tag that will have a class name equal to flex, items-center, justify-between, because we want to have content on both left and the right side, margin top of 7, and margin bottom of 3. Within it, another div with a class name equal to flex and items-center. And finally, within here, we can map over our icons or technologies for that project. So we can say something like icon lists, which we're destructuring from each one of these projects, .map, or we get an icon. And then for each icon, we return a div that'll have a key equal to icon, because each one is unique, a class name equal to border, border-white over in square brackets 0.2, and right within it, we can display an image, img, that will have a source equal to icon with an alt tag of icon and a class name of p-2. So if now we save this, you can see all of these technologies. Typically, these should be circles, right? So let's give it a rounded -full property. That's good. BG-black. On large devices, W of 10 for the width. On large devices, H of 10. And on smaller devices, W8 and H of 8. And this should be enough for all of them to become circles. We can also give it a flex, justify center, and items center, which will center it vertically and horizontally within those circles. Let's also give it a special style property, which will say dynamically translate x minus 5 times index times 2, and then outside of that, px. And then we get the index right here. So this will move each one by some multiple of the index. Let's properly spell index here, and let's save it. It looks like I didn't properly close it. So inside of style, I am missing a transform property that we then assign to translate. And if I save this, if we reload, they're appearing one on top of another, which gives for a very cool visual effect, like they're all together within this project. Very cool. Finally, right outside of this div containing all the icon lists, we can create another div, which will say checkout live site. So let's create a P immediately, check live site. And below it, we can render a FA location arrow, import it, and give it a class name of MS for margin inline start of 3. And we can give it a color of hash CBACF9. That's going to look something like this, check live site. We're using the same purplish color we're using right here. And now we can style this div with a class name of flex, justify dash center, and items dash center. There we go. Finally, let's style the p tag by giving it a class name of flex. On large devices, text dash XL. On medium devices, text dash XS, and typically text dash SM, and also text dash purple for the color. This will make it a bit smaller and it will look good. Now you can notice that when I hover over the project, there seems to be quite a long title right here appearing. So instead of the title, maybe we show the URL right here in the pin container. So the link can also be the title, which kind of makes more sense in this use case because it tells you where we're going after we click on this card, which is pretty cool. I think that's how it should be used. And believe it or not, with that, we're done with what you could argue is the most important section of our portfolio, the project section. So if I open it up on full screen, this is how it looks like. And this is how it looks like on the final design. It is a big difference, right? Here, the projects are much larger. And here, they're kind of more neatly packed together. So let's quickly fix that. Here we have this div which is containing everything. And within it, we have the div containing only the projects. So to fix it, let's first look into this outer div below the H1, this one here. It's wrapping everything, it has the padding, but we can just give it a bit of a different horizontal gap rather than a vertical gap. So gap X of 24, we can have more space, but gap Y of just 8, so a bit lower, like this. This will change the gap dynamics. And now we can also modify this div within the projects by giving it a small property of H of 41 rem and typically H of 32 rem. So we can override our previous 25 to give it a bit more space. Also, on small devices, we can give it a width of 570 pixels. So a bit more than before. And this will make it more spread out across the screen. But of course, now we have to fill that space somehow, so we can also modify this card within the pin container by giving it on small devices a width of 570 pixels. This will make them much bigger and much more powerful. Typically, width of 80 VW. On small devices, we can give it a height of 40 VH, and typically a height of 30 VH. On large devices, we can remove this one right here and keep it margin bottom of 10. Great. So now they're looking much more similar as they do on the final website. So now that we have a couple of sections ready, and this is maybe the most important one, we can also implement the floating navbar, or at least the links, so we can actually scroll down to the project section. To do that, we can go back to the original homepage, and you can see the structure for our links. The only thing we have to do now is remove this array and use the constants, nav items, coming from @/data. This one includes links to about, projects, testimonials, and contact. So let's save it. And as soon as you do, if you scroll down and then up, you should be able to see different parts. We can remove the login at the end by heading into the floating nav and then scrolling down and removing this login button. There we go. And we'll also have to make some small modifications, as now it looks a bit narrow. So let's go to the top of the JSX and to the class names. Let's change rounded-full to rounded LG. Let's remove this dark border, as well as the dark background and BG white. We don't need that. And we can change padding right to padding X of 10. We can also remove these and add a padding Y of 5. So now it has a bit more space, but it doesn't have any background or a border. So let's add a border white over 0.2 inside of square brackets. This will give it a nice tiny border. And we can remove this border transparent as well. Let's give it BG of something like black 100. Okay, that's good. And if you want to, you can make this rounded full. It's really a personal preference, depending on whether you want to have a pill-like shape or a rectangular-like shape. I think this is good. Now let's see if all our links are pointing to right things. If I click About, it points to About, which is great. If I click Projects, it doesn't point to projects. So let's go back to the recent projects, and let's give this div an ID equal to projects. If we do that, and now scroll to projects, you can see that it works. Great. And this is a pretty cool navbar because it only shows when you actually need it. Like if you're scrolling down, it means you want to see more, but if you go back up, it means you want to see something specific. So we're going to make it work for testimonials and contact later on as well. Great. With that said, we have now completed the most important sections of your portfolio. The dynamic homepage that has animations, the About section, which is incredibly unique. I mean, I haven't seen something like this in a long time. And also a small selection of your recent projects where people can click them and check out their live site. And with this many features completed on your developer portfolio, it's important to ensure a smooth user experience, optimized performance, and just in general, showcasing that you're using all the best practices of developing applications. For that reason, we'll use Sentry, an enterprise-level application monitoring software that allows you to fix your portfolio very quickly if it breaks. And specifically in this case, will also enable your users to share when they experience something unexpected with the site. We'll integrate this model that will allow them to provide you direct feedback. And this matters a lot because you're showing to whoever is looking at your portfolio that you know how to implement best practices to your apps. So let's get started with integrating Sentry. Click the link in the description so you can follow along and see exactly what I'm seeing, and then either sign in or get started. Sign up using your preferred method. And if you've used it before, you should be able to see the issues happening on your other projects so you can fix it and check out the projects you've done. But if you haven't, you should be able to see the onboarding. And there's a trick to get to the onboarding even if you've used Sentry before. just copy your current URL and instead of projects, say onboarding. That'll show you this Welcome to Sentry integration guide. Click Install Sentry, choose your framework, in this case Next.js, and configure the SDK. We can follow the commands and install the Sentry wizard by pasting this command in the terminal. It will ask us whether we want to proceed, to which we can say yes. And now it's going to ask us a series of questions. This wizard will create and update files. Okay, that's good to know. So let's continue. We'll use the Sentry SaaS version. We do have a Sentry account. It'll try to automatically log us in. We can select our Sentry project, and it will install all the necessary dependencies. This is a pretty cool feature that allows you to avoid ad blockers. If you want to use it, that's okay. But for now, we're just going to press no and proceed with the default options. We'll use yes for this one, yes for CI/CD tools, and then you'll be given the Sentry auth token, which you need to copy. And let's immediately store it somewhere for later on. For example, in the .env.local file, and we can paste it right here, Sentry auth token, and then we can continue. And the project has been successfully set up. That means that Sentry has set up everything for us. Everything from their client configuration guides to this instrumentation file, and even a global error example, which allows us to trigger an error to see if everything works. So now let's click the next button right here. And it looks like I connected this Sentry instance to one of my previous projects. But that's okay, I don't mind it. In your case, most likely you have a new clean project right here. As a matter of fact, it's even better that I have all of these previous issues, events, and all the data right here loaded, as typically it can take about 15 minutes for all the data to show up. So for you, it might take some time. So right now I can guide you through everything that I already have here, and then you can get back to this page later on and see it for yourself as well. One thing we need to do is we need to go to this page that was created for us. Sentry example page, I think is the URL. Yes. So if you go to your portfolio and navigate over to Sentry example page, you should be able to see a page that looks like this, and you can click throw error. And you can see the error was thrown, Sentry example frontend error. This now means that we should be able to catch that error under our issues. And if I reload, here it is, Sentry example frontend error. You should be able to see just this one if you have a new clean project. Now, what Sentry allows you to do is to track the operating system, the browser, the device, and a lot more information about the error that was thrown, such as the entire session replay of what the user was seeing when the error happened. This is incredibly useful because when your users are browsing your portfolio in production, it's hard to know what's going to happen on their side. But with this, you can very easily see the error and debug it because you're also getting the complete breadcrumbs of the event and all of the information coming from the console. Some of the other things we have here are queries, where you can see what your users are doing, also requests they're making, web vitals, which matters a lot for a portfolio. So here you can track how much time it takes for the website to load, replays that we have discussed so far, where you can see if people are clicking something that is not working, or if they're clicking something many times, which is considered a rage click. That's not good. It means that your user experience is not as it should be. And in the dashboard, you can also see a lot about what they're doing, what kind of experience they're having, which pages load the slowest, people from which countries are visiting your portfolio, and much more. But what I want to explore further right now is this user feedback feature, which allows you to create bug reports so that users can let you know about sneaky issues right away. And every report will automatically include related replays, tags, and errors. So let's set it up. I believe we have already installed this, and we have to add a special integration called Sentry.feedback integration. So copy this, and let's search for this Sentry.init within our code. So if I go here and search for Sentry.init, you can see it in 3 places: client, edge, and server. In this case, they give us an alert saying that it must be added to client config. So let's go to the client. And I believe we can just add integrations if we don't already have any. Oh, we do have a replay integration. So now we can just add a feedback integration. And the color scheme can be dark. Now, if we go back to our portfolio and go to localhost 3000, would you look at that? There is a report a bug button, which matches our color scheme very well, where people can leave their name, email, description of the bug. For example, let's see if we can find a bug on our current website. I mean, this is technically not a bug, as somebody only needs to copy your email once, but let's say they copy it and they forgot they copied it and they want to click this again. No more confetti again, right? Again, not a bug, but you can implement a refresh after every couple of seconds. So let's say this user doesn't like that. And we can say email copy button doesn't work. And we're going to leave many exclamation marks like an angry user. We can also add a screenshot, but I believe it's not necessary. Let's see how that works. Oh, very cool. So I can just select it from my screen immediately, and it will target this part of the page. Okay. And we can send a bug report. Oh, that's it. Thank you for your report. Let's see how much time it takes for us to get the user feedback. I reload. And here it is. Email copy button doesn't work. Let's click it. You can see the screen they were seeing when they gave that, their URL, and also the entire replay. Of course, the numbers and letters are hidden here for privacy, but you can see exactly what the user was seeing on the screen when the error happened, as well as their browser, name, extension, version, and more. I mean, this is amazing. Typically, you would have to go back and forth with the user, asking them what their browser was, what their operating system was, and more. And here, you just get this error. In this case, I'm not going to mark it as spam, but I will mark it as resolved. As I said, it's not really a bug. But with that said, Sentry is amazing. I reloaded the page, I can move up and down, and Sentry is tracking some of the events right here. That's a pretty cool thing. So if you want to track how many people clicked show my work or clicked contact, you can do that as well. All of the events will be shown under replays and the requests. But with that said, let's continue building out our phenomenal portfolio. Next on our list, kind words from satisfied clients. To start developing it, I'll scroll down, navigate over to the homepage, and create a new section under components called clients.tsx, where we can run RAFCE, and then we can simply use that component right here, clients, and we can import it, go into it, and start developing it. Our client section will start in the same way that our project section started. So we can quickly go to recent projects and just copy the first div, h1, and even the opening tag of the div below. And then paste it right here and properly close all the divs. That is one, and I believe we need one more. There we go. So now let's indent it properly and let's save it. Instead of saying a small selection of recent projects, we can say something like kind words from. And then we can say something like satisfied clients. And also we can add a space right here, I believe. There we go. That's good. Right below, we have flex. We don't have to wrap it here because we don't have any elements within it, but we will make it flex-col as we want to show elements below. Items-center, and then we don't need anything else in this case. And within this div, we can start showing those cards. Of course, these are the ones I'm talking about. And if you can guess it correctly, they're coming from Aeternity. So let's go here and let's search for infinite moving cards. This is what we need. And we can copy their code base, infinite moving cards. So copy, or let's see it right here. Yeah, this is the card. So we can create a new component under UI called infinite moving cards. .tsx and paste it right here. At the top, we need to fix this to /utils/cn. And now we can use it right here within this div by creating a new infinite moving cards. Close it. It is a self-closing component, and it accepts a couple of props, such as items, which need a quote, a name, and a title, a direction, and speed, and some optional parameters. So let's say items is equal to testimonials coming from data, direction is equal to right, and speed is equal to slow. Let's save it. And if we go back, right off the bat, you can see some cards moving right here. This is the default styling coming from Eternity UI. We can wrap it within an additional div right here. So let's put it inside. And let's give it a couple more properties, such as a class name equal to h-50 vh, like this. On medium devices, h-30 rem, rounded-md, that'll make it look like this, flex-call, so they appear one below another, anti-aliased, this will help with the way that they move, items-center, relative, and overflow-hidden. And now with that, we can move into the infinite moving cards, and we can style them to our liking. So let's go to the JSX part of things right here. And let's scroll down to this UL right here and change the gap to 16 to give it a bit more space. Then we can go into each individual list item, and let's change the medium width from 450 to about 60 VW. So 60 vertical height. This will give it a bit more space. Also, we can change the general width to about 90 VW, much more than before. We can also make this border slate 800, so a bit darker. And we can modify the padding X8 to just padding of 5, and on medium devices, padding of 16. So it's styled a bit differently. Now, as before, we can generate a specific linear gradient, okay? And in our case, a bit of a darker color might work better. So I believe we have already used this linear gradient somewhere. So if I search for linear gradient, let's see, we used it in the Bento Grid. Yep. So we can copy this same one we have used before, and we can paste it right here under background and save. And with that background color, we also just had a background. So let's copy that as well. Make a new property of background and make it this, and then this is going to be a background color. If we save it, you can see now it kind of matches our design a bit more. And by default, if you hover over it, it stops. That's great. And in this case, we can change the key to IDX because sometimes our names are repeating of these testimonials. Okay, let's modify the text a bit. This span element right here, let's change the color to text white and also text LG to make it a bit larger. Here we go. Let's also add a new div right here above the name, above the span of name for the profile photo. So that will be a div with a class name equal to ME. So this is margin inline end of 3 with an image. So IMG of source is /profile.svg. Of course, you can make this dynamic per each of the users, and we can give it an alt tag of profile. We can change the text color to text white one more time. And instead of font normal, it can be font bold. And also let's make it text XL, so extra large. Finally, we can change the text of the item title to text-white-200. You can see that now it looks completely different. You can see this profile photo right here. You can see the name of the person, but it looks like it's jumping out a bit. So it looks like not everything fits on the screen. Whereas on the finished website, this is how it looks like. So let's play with that a bit. We can go to the topmost div, this one right here, And we're going to change the max W7XL to W-screen, which will make it expand over the entire screen. There we go. That's much better. So now we can see that a lot of this actually fits, but still it looks like this bottom part is jumping out of the card, whereas on the finished one, it fits and it has much more width. So let's scroll down. I think it should be either in the UI or the LI right here. The LI has a W of 90 VW, which seems good, and a max W of full. So yeah, this looks good to me. But if we scroll down, here we have two separate spans and we want to add them together. So I'll create another span, which will wrap those two, which is the name and the title. And this one will have a class name equal to flex, flex-call, and a gap of 1. And now that I think about it, this span should have been a div. So let's just make it a div, not a David, just a div. And it looks like you have to reload every time for this testimonial section to see the changes. So if I do that now, it's looking better, but still not quite there yet. It's possible that our text is just a bit too large. So right here on item.quote span, we can give it a text-sm, and then on medium devices, text-lg. I think this will make more sense. There we go. And now we have a card which is much more similar, if not exactly the same, as on our finished website. This is great. It looks like we just need some more spacing between this section and the bottom section as well. So if I go back, this is looking great. And we can go back to our infinite moving cards. And I believe we don't even need this div that's wrapping the infinite moving cards because we already have it within it. So we can remove it here. And let's make sure we don't have an extra div. Save it, reload, and let's see how it looks like. That's good. Looks the same as before. Right here on max LG devices, we can also give it a margin top of 10. That's good. And now we can start crafting a section right below it, which will be within this same div. So let's do it right here. A div within which we want to wrap over our companies. So we can do that by saying companies dot map and make sure to import it from the data object, where we get each individual company with its ID, image, name, as well as name, image. And I think that's it. Right within here, we can create a div. And it looks like I didn't properly open or close this function block. So let's do that right away. And let's give this div a key equal to ID and a class name of flex on medium devices max-w-60, typically max-w of 32, and a gap of 2 between the elements. And this section you would use if you have worked with some companies before. So we can add an image and add a source equal to img with an alt equal to name and a class name equal to, on medium devices, w of 10, otherwise w of 5. And if we save that, you should be able to see some company logos appear, but we can also duplicate that image and show their whole name img. So companies typically have a shorter logo and then a larger name of that company. And we can make it a bit larger, such as on medium devices, W of 24, and typically W of 20. So now you can see what I meant. And we can also style this outside div to make it look better by giving it a class name equal to flex. That's going to make them show in a row. Flex-wrap, so they show in multiple rows if necessary. Items-center to center them vertically. Justify-center to center them horizontally. A gap of 4 to create some spacing. On medium devices, a gap of 16, so even larger. And on max LG, margin top of 10. So this means it will show on smaller devices to divide it from the testimonials. And if you haven't worked with any companies so far, you can leave this section off, or you can maybe put the logos or names of your applications you have developed. Be creative. But as a last resort, you can just remove it. With that in mind, we have concluded our client section. So let's check it out on full screen. There we go. I think I need to reload for the speed to take effect. There we go. So it's much slower. And if you want to read it, you can just hover over it to stop it. And of course, here you would put your own testimonials you've received from other people that have either worked with you or you've worked for. That's always a great idea. Whenever you're working on a project, collect testimonials from people that you work with. It gives other people a sense that you know what you're doing and that people actually liked working with you, which matters a lot. So yeah, now we have the satisfied client section and we should be able to easily scroll to it. Well, we cannot right now, but if we give this client section an ID of not projects, but rather testimonials, and now if we select it right here, you can see how nicely it scrolls to it. This is great. The next section on our list is my work experience with these cards that have a moving light appearing on them. And you notice how this section didn't take too much time to develop. That's because we are reusing just one single component and then moving through it. Same situation happens right here. So let's go ahead and let's get this section developed. We can start by going back to page and creating a new component, which we can call something like experience. So let's go to components and create a new experience.tsx section where we can run RAFCE, import it and use it right here, experience coming from components, get into it, and we should be able to see experience at the bottom. So let's get started. First, let's copy the heading from the client section. That includes the div with the h1 and the first opening div as before. We can paste it right here and properly close the two divs. There is one and there is two. Now, if we save this, instead of kind words from our clients, we can say something like my, and then in a span, we can say work experience. There we go. Make sure to include a space right here. And then below that, we have a div with the rest of the content. So this one doesn't necessarily have to be flex. We can just give it a W full for full width, margin top to divide it a bit from the top, and then we'll make it a grid, okay? On large devices, we will have 4 columns. So grid calls 4, and on mobile, we'll have just grid calls 1. And then a gap of 10 between each one of these work experiences. We're talking about these cards, of course. So let's map over them. I'm gonna say work experience dot map, where we're gonna map over each one, each card, and for each one return a button. So in a way, we can make them clickable if you want to. This will temporarily break our application, but that's okay, as we want to use an externity moving border component, okay? A border that moves around the container. It can be used for buttons or cards. So let's copy its usage right here. And let's create a new component called moving borders.tsx and paste it right here. You'll notice that it has an export called moving border, and at the top of that, it has an export called button. So let's go back here and let's import the button from UI moving borders, and we can provide something within that button, such as a div, and within the div, we can provide the image. That will have a source equal to card.thumbnail, an alt tag of card.thumbnail2, and a class name equal to, on large devices, W of 32, on medium, W of 20, and typically a W of 16. So now if we save this and go back, scroll all the way down, you should be able to see 4 cards that look like this. They have images within them, and you can see this animation happening, which looks great. Since we're mapping over those buttons, we need to give them an ID. So let's expand it, and let's say key is equal to card.id. You can also provide some other properties, such as the border radius may be a bit larger of 1.75 rem. Let's see. Okay, not too big of a difference. And we can also give it some additional class names by saying class name is equal to flex-1, text-white, border-neutral, -200, and on dark, border of slate 800, which is what we care about. You can also play with the durations a bit by making it random, by saying duration is equal to math.floor, math.random, and then times 10,000 plus 10,000. I found those values to be very random, and they seem to work great for these cards. So you can see now it's moving a bit slower, and they're moving at different paces, and it just looks a bit more engaging. Again, if you prefer the regular one, that's okay, but we can also make a decision later on once we conclude the look and feel of the card. So let's do that by giving this div a class name equal to flex. On large devices, flex-row, otherwise flex-col. On large devices, items-center, padding-3, padding y-6. On medium devices, padding of 5. On large devices, padding of 10, and always a gap of 2. This didn't do anything just yet, but as we add more elements within this div, it will position them nicely, such as this div. We can give it a class name equal to, on large devices, margin s, so that's inline start of 5, and within it, we can render an h1, within which we can render a card title, and below that, we can also render a p tag that will render a card.desc, which stands for description. There we go, but this looks quite bad right now, so let's style them a bit by giving the h1 a class name of text-start, text-xl, on medium devices text-2xl, and font-bold. So this will make it even larger. There we go. And we can also style the p tag by giving it a class name of text-start, text-white-100 to change the color a bit, margin top of 3 to divide it from the title, and font-semi-bold to not make it as bolded as the title. Great. So now we need to dive into this button and style it further. Or it's not going to be a button in our case, it will be a card. Starting with this component class name, we can remove the H16 and W40, and instead we can add on medium devices col-span-2. This will make it span across 2 lines on larger devices, and immediately as we removed the W40, now it takes much more width. So it fills out the entire space and already looks so much better. And that was the only change we needed to make. So you can see how a Sternity UI is pretty cool in a way that it allows you to not install the code, but just copy and paste it, and therefore you can change it. Still, if I had to give feedback to a Sternity, I would prefer to have a CLI integration like ShatCN, where I can just install this component and it automatically gets added to my code base. It would make things just a bit easier rather than having to go here and then copy all of these parts. But with that said, we're now done with our experience section. So let's check it out in the full screen, and it looks amazing. This was actually so simple to implement. You can see how some of the starting parts like this navigation bar or this hero section or especially this Bento Grid took us a bit more time, but this project section and the testimonials and even the work experience was super simple to make. So with that in mind, the next section that we can work on after the experience is the My approach, which uses these very interesting cards to show different phases, 1, 2, and 3. Look at that animation. Let's implement that next. Back on our page, we can create a new component called approach or process, whatever you prefer. .tsx, run rafce, and simply import and use it right here. Approach. It's going to say approach at the bottom, which means we can get into it and start implementing it. For that, we'll use a Sternity's canvas reveal effect, a dot background that expands on hover as seen on Clerk's website. That's good. So we can scroll all the way down, and here we can get the canvas reveal effect. So let's copy it and create a new UI component called canvas reveal effect.tsx and just paste it here. That is good. Here we have that canvas reveal effect component. And then we can scroll all the way up, and directly within the approach, we can copy the code of how we can use this card and the canvas reveal effect. So let's copy it and paste it right here within this div. You'll notice we need a few things. We need a card and also a canvas reveal effect. The canvas reveal effect we already have coming from this file, but where is the card coming from? We copied just the JSX part right here, but what we didn't see is that right below it was the card as well as the icon. So it might be better to just copy the entire thing and paste it right here. So now we have everything, and we can just do export default and call it approach as we did before. So const approach is equal to an arrow function that we can export default at the bottom. So export default approach. But now we also have a card component right within here. Let's collapse everything so it's easier to see it. Icon, a Sternity icon, we have a card, and finally we have the approach. And we can import this components UI canvas reveal effect as we have already copied that, and it's coming from add / components / and I think it was the canvas. Let's see, canvas reveal effect. Yes, so it's /UI / canvas reveal effect. And now we should have everything to show our cards within this approach. So going back to our portfolio and reloading the page, you can see 3 cards appear right here with some names. So let's turn it from this to this, where it says my approach with different phases. First things first, we can wrap everything as a section and give it a class name equal to w-full and padding y of 20. Then within it, we can create a new h1 where we can give it a class name equal to heading, and it will say my, and then a span with a class name equal to text-purple, something like this, that can say approach. And of course, we have to properly close it. There we go. That was supposed to be better if we could actually see it, but we cannot see it yet. I reloaded and it appeared right here, which is good. Now let's modify the styling on this div. Instead of padding y of 20, I'm going to do margin y of 20. Flex column, on large devices, flex row. This is all good. We don't need the BG wide and dark and so on. We just need a gap of 4. That will provide a bit less gap between the elements. And then we're rendering an Sternity card. It has a title, it has an icon, and within it, it renders a canvas reveal effect. And that happens 3 times. You could potentially just map over the data and then show different things, or you can just keep it as it is. For now, I'll just keep it as it is and put everything in a new line so we can easily see what is happening. There we go. Radial gradient for the cute fade, okay. And then this is the last card. Also has a title, icon, and a card. Great. So now we can modify the data and the look and feel of these cards. Let's do the data first. The title of the first one will be something like planning and strategy. If we save it, nothing happens yet, but if I hover over it, you can see how nice that looks like. The icon will be just a regular icon, but we're going to also pass it an order equal to phase 1. And then we can go into this Aeternity icon, accept this order as a prop. You can call it anything, like a title as well, and give it a type of a type string. And then we can use it right here below. So no longer will this be just an SVG like it is right now. It will be a div that will render a button coming from Aeternity UI. So we can go here and search for button, and you can choose any kind of button from here. I like the one with the border magic, which is this one right here, and you can just press copy. When you do that, you can put the button right within the div, like this, but it looks like I got the invert one instead of the magic. So let me just go to the magic one. There we go. And copy it and paste it. Yeah, that's the one. It has a couple of spans and some more stuff happening. So if we go here, you can see the border magic, as simple as that. And here we can render the order. By order, I mean kind of like 1, 2, 3. For the first one, we're passing phase 1, and for others, we're not passing anything yet. If you want to, you can style it further, but this looks good enough for me. So let's close it and let's go back up. Let's pass other phases. So order is equal to phase 2. And then here we can give an order equal to phase 3. There we go. Next, we can give each card a description, and you need to add it to a card, not here to the canvas reveal effect. So expand it and then say description is equal to, and then you can add it right here. Now you can get it either from the deployed website or even better from the final Figma design, which you can find in the description. Simply copy it, and I will repeat this process for all of the cards. Added one description. This is phase 2, and we will also add the description right here equal to, let's copy it. And let's also add the title as well. So I will copy the title, override it. And one last is remaining card with a title of development and launch and a description right here. Description is equal to this one right here. This is looking great. Now, by itself, this will not read the description as the card doesn't know what a description is. So let's dive into the card and modify it to accept a new prop of description. Let's add it. Description is equal to a type of a string. And right below the title, right here, we can replicate this H2, change it to description, and we'll have to modify a few styles. Let's make it text-sm instead of text-xl and save it. Okay, this is better. Let's also give it a style property with a color of hash E4ECFF and also a text-center class name. If we do this and you hover, this will look better. We can also center the title by giving it a text-center property. And we can maybe make it even larger by giving it a text-3XL property right here instead of simply XL at the top. So now that will look something like this. That's better. And we can change the dimensions of the card a bit by scrolling up all the way to this primary div. Here, we can say on large devices, give it a height of 35 rem. We can remove this relative and give it a rounded -3XL. This will make the cards smaller initially, but they'll be big on larger devices. This is good. We can also try to center this phase button by going right here. And you can see the icon. We'll need to use absolute positioning to center this. So let's say absolute right here after the translate Y4. Let's give it a top dash 50%, left dash 50%, It has to be inside of square brackets. And now we can also use a translate. So translate dash x dash and then 50% like this. Oh, we have to do minus 50% right here. And also translate dash y dash minus 50% like this as well. And now it is properly centered. This is looking great. We also don't need this radial gradient for cute fade, as I don't really see too big of a difference. Yeah, I think we can remove this part. If you want to, you can change the colors, the dot size, and more. But for now, I'm okay with those. And with that said, our approach phase seems to be done, at least on mobile. But let's check out desktop, or full screen in this case. Yep, this is looking great. Love it. We have this nice animation, and you can specify different phases within your project that you're working on. If you want to, we could make these just a bit larger, so it's easier to see phase 1, 2, and 3. So let's go to our button. Yeah, that's right here. And let's make it a text-2XL. We can add that to the span element right here, text-2XL. We can remove the text small. And we can also make it bold since we have increased the size. So font-bold instead of font medium. And here we can also give it a bit more padding X of 5 and Y of 2 to accommodate for the larger font size. There we go. This is beautiful. The next thing we can focus on is this minimalistic yet quite effective footer. So let's do it next. I collapse my screen and I'll go back to the home page and create a new section, which we can create in the components folder called footer.tsx, run RAFCE, and import it right here by saying footer coming from components. It will immediately appear at the bottom, which means we can get into it and start developing it. First things first, we can turn this div into an HTML5 semantic footer tag and give it a class name of wfull, so it extends for the full width of the screen, padding top of 20 and padding bottom of 10, and an ID of contact so we can very quickly scroll to it from the navigation bar. That's gonna look something like this. Right within it, we can create another div for an image, and this will be the footer grid. So we can say image with a source equal to footer-grid.svg with an alt tag of grid and a class name equal to w-full, h-full, and opacity of 50. If we save this, it might be a bit hard to spot it, especially since we haven't yet added classes to the outside div. So let's do that by giving it a class name of w-full, absolute, left-0, and minus bottom-72, and a min h of 96, like this. So if we do this, it might still be hard to spot it. And on large devices, you should be able to see just a bit of a grid right here. If you want to see it better, you can increase the opacity to 100%. There we go, but this might be a bit too much. So I'll bring it back to 50 and collapse the browser. We can go below this div, wrapping the image, and create another div that's going to be for our content with a class name equal to flex, flex-call, and items-center. Within it, we can create a new h1 that will say something like ready to take, and then within a span, your outside digital presence to the next level. Okay, let's fix this digital. And we should be able to see it right here. We can also make the span with a color of text purple. So class name is text-purple. And we can give it a class name equal to heading on large devices max-w-45vw. Great. So in mobile, it looks great. And right below it, we can create a p tag that will say, reach out to me today, and let's discuss how I can help you achieve your goals. So always make it about the other person. Also, it's not good to use apostrophes, so use these characters instead. Let's see how that looks like. And let's style it a bit by giving it a class name equal to text-white-200, so it's not full white. On medium devices, margin top of 10. Otherwise, margin Y of 5, and text-center. If we save it, that looks much better, and we are ready to start creating the button portion of the page. So we can create an anchor tag that will have an href equal to mail to, and then put your email here, such as contact@jsmastery.pro. And here you can render that magic button, which we have used before, importing it from UI magic button with a title equal to let's get in touch, an icon equal to FA location arrow like this. You need to import it, and a position equal to right. And that's going to give us this nice looking button, which we have seen before. We can go all the way below this div and create one last div for our bottom of the footer, inside of which we'll have our p tag with a copyright. So we can say copyright, and we can try to find that copyright sign. So we can say copyright sign. There we go. We can copy it and paste it and say something like 2024, and then put your name. There we go. Let's style that a bit further by giving it a class name equal to, on medium devices, text-base, otherwise text-small, on medium devices, font-normal, and typically font-light, as we don't want it to stand out too much. Let's also style this div outside of the p tag by giving it a class name of flex, margin top of 16 to divide it from the button, on medium devices, flex row, typically flex column, and also we want to center it by giving it a justify between, so there's a space between, and also we want to give it items-center. So now there's this copyright in the center, but as soon as we add another div right here, it will move to the left side, and this div will have a class name equal to flex items-center, and on medium devices, gap of 3, but on bigger devices, a gap of 6. And within here, you can display your social media profiles by saying social media.map, where you get each individual profile. And for each profile, you can automatically return a div with a key equal to profile.id. And within it, you can have an image with a source equal to profile.img, an alt tag of profile.id, a width of 20, and a height of 20. And of course, you need to import social media from @/data, as those are our constants. So if you do that and scroll down, you should be able to see those 3 icons. But we can improve that further by giving this div a class name of W-10, H-10. This will give them the width and the height. We can also give it cursor-pointer so people know they can click them. Also flex, justify-center, items-center. Why? Because we will put them within circles. So we can give it a backdrop filter, a backdrop blur LG, saturate 180, this is an interesting one, and BG opacity of 75, and BG black 200. So this will make it look like it's within some kind of circles right here after we give it a border. So we can say rounded-LG, border, and border black 300. So just a bit of a difference from what we have here. And now we can see it's within some kind of blurry or glassy rectangles. And let's just fix this items center as well, so it looks good. There we go. That's better. And that is our footer. Of course, it looks much better on full screen, so you can see it right here. And this button leads you directly to your email client, which is great. And with that, believe it or not, we came to the end of this phenomenal portfolio build. Congratulations for sticking till the end, and soon enough, we'll deploy to the internet so that everyone can see your work. But first, let's fix some bugs. I noticed that if I scroll anywhere, and if it adds this about section here, or if I go to testimonials, whatever, and then I try to go back, a weird thing happens. The top is cut off, and then if I go to the bottom, there's too much stuff at the bottom here, too much empty space. So how can we fix that? Let's go to our home page, and right here, you can see overflow hidden, and we can remove that part. So if I save this, click show my work, and scroll up, it seems to be good now. Let's try going somewhere else like testimonials. Yep, that works as well. Let's try maybe contact. There is some more space at the bottom still, but at least the most important part, which is the top part, was fixed. So now we can always go here, and even if I reload while in the about, it scrolls and I can still go back. And I think the best solution to this would be just to remove this div containing the grid image. It wasn't that visible anyway, so just removing it will immediately fix the problem and make our footer look great, while at the same time fixing all the issues we've had with the hero section. Now, since we removed that overflow thing, we have this weird horizontal scroll happening. So let's go ahead and fix that. Back in the home page, we're gonna add another type of overflow. Overflow-clip. If I save this, you'll notice that the bottom bar disappears, but the top bar still is here. So that means that we cannot scroll to the right side anymore. We can just scroll up and down, and the behavior works exactly as it should. Great. So we have fixed that. The actual nav bar does work on desktop devices, but what I've noticed on mobile is if I go here and then choose mobile, you can see that for some reason, it is completely empty. It seems like there's nothing there. So let's fix that too. In our floating nav, if you scroll down a bit to where we're showing our list items, you can see that now we're hiding the nav item on extra small devices. And on small, we show them. But in our case, we don't have the icons for all items, so we want to show the name always. So let's just make it text-sm, and let's also give it a important cursor-pointer to make it seem clickable. Scroll down and then up, you can see the full navigation, and we can go down, or we can go all the way up. But it does seem like our footer is hidden a bit, so we might want to give it some space. It's good that we checked it out on mobile too. So if we go to the footer, we can remove the padding top of 20 and instead add a margin bottom of about 100 pixels, which should give us enough space for the full content to show, at least on mobile. So if we check this out, you can see that now we can see everything clearly. The rest of the page looks amazing. And let's go back to desktop. And you'll see that now we have some extra spacing here, which kind of is okay, but we don't need this much. So we can go back right here and say on medium devices and up, we can do something like margin bottom of just 5, let's say. That's about 20 pixels instead of 100. So there we go. This now is much better, and our application is bug-free. If you do encounter some bugs, you can report them. Or what I would recommend even more is just adding a new post under the Modern Portfolio Discord right here, where you can just say what's bothering you. And of course, make sure to read the guidelines to be able to ask the question in a proper way. With that in mind, let's get our portfolio deployed. And we're back on our Hostinger's dashboard. From here, we can go to our file manager. You can go into the public_HTML, and there's only a default PHP file which we can delete. This is where our build folder will go. So let's go back to our application, stop it from running by pressing Ctrl+C and then clearing it. And we can go to our next.config.mjs and expand this next.config object. Here we can say output, and in this case, we'll choose export, which will give us an exported build output in the out directory. So let's say output, and that's gonna be export. Great. Now we can open up the terminal and say npm run build. Immediately, you can notice that it's building out everything and it will return it in an out folder. It will take a couple of seconds. You don't have to worry about these messages because on the bottom, you can see compiled successfully. So if we scroll to the bottom, you'll see that we have a type error, and this happens. So for that reason, there's one thing I like to do for builds, and that is to go to next.config and say TypeScript, ignore build errors is set to true. It is possible that we had an occasional TypeScript warning, but this will just skip it and run our build regardless. And just before we spin up our npm run build once again, let's just go right here to our file tree, to the app, and remove this Sentry example page, as we don't need that. This is the one that we use to trigger that example error. And another thing we need to delete is this Sentry API, as we won't be using it. So once you delete it, open up your terminal and rerun npm run build. Let's give it some time and I'll be right back. And there we go, pre-rendered as static content. So now if we go right here, you can see the out folder, which you can right click and then click reveal in Finder or open in File Explorer if you're in Windows. Enter the out folder, copy everything that is in there, and simply drag and drop it to public HTML. This should take less than a minute, and with that in mind, we can simply go back to our H panel and go to your new URL. In literally seconds, your website has been deployed to the internet. You have seen that nice animation happen, and don't forget, you have HTTPS security. As you can see, there is a proper SSL certificate added to your domain. So let's give it one last look. Show me your work. We have this 3D globe. People can copy your email, see a selection of your projects, see what other people have said about you, your work experience, process, and they can easily send you an email. Oh, and what if they're checking your website out from mobile? It also looks amazing. Everything fits nicely within one screen. The animations are there, especially on mobile, as you put your finger over a specific project. Testimonials look good, and everything just feels like a native mobile application. Phenomenal job on coming to the end of this video. Not many people do, but you did. This means that you might be interested in diving a bit deeper. So go to jsmastery.pro and check out our ultimate Next.js course. Here we dive into so much more depth, teaching you how to truly use Next.js and get from this performance to this. We have a lot of deep dives where you can see exactly how things work behind the scenes. You build and deploy a very complex applications, and we even have some active lessons which allow you not to just follow along with the video, but we give you a task, an example, and then resources and hints so you can truly build something on your own and learn it. And of course, the app you'll build in the course is pretty crazy. It is a full stack, modern Dev Overflow application. Basically, Stack Overflow on steroids with AI. Other people have loved it. I'm sure you'll love it too, so check it out. With that in mind, take a bit of a break. You deserved it. Congrats on your new portfolio. I want to see you make some changes and tag me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you are, and show me what you have done. And I will share your portfolio with everybody so they can see your work. Once again, great work and have a wonderful day.